of Graham County, Arizona, longtime crusader for freedom and individual rights. He fought the law, the feds. In 1994, he filed a lawsuit challenging the Brady Bill to stop the federal government from forcing another unfunded mandate down our throats. He won that decision with the U.S. Supreme Court on the issue of states' rights. This suit catapulted him to national attention. He's been a guest on the Donahue Show. Is Phil still alive? Yes. Good Morning America, Crossfire, Nightline, CNBC, and Showtime, The American Candidate. He's been on over 500 radio talk shows nationwide, ranging from G. Gordon Liddy and Charles Boyette to Derry Brownfield and Pat Buchanan. Please welcome Sheriff Richard Mack.
I sued the federal government back in 1994, won a case at the United States Supreme Court, and I'm going to show you what this case did. I'm going to show you the evidence. And because I'm an investigator, or at least I used to be when I was in law enforcement. I was in law enforcement 20 years. And I served as a detective and investigator. So you're the jury, and I'm going to show you the evidence. Do you know that every peace officer, every sheriff, every state official, the governor, everybody that works for you in government swore an oath to uphold and defend the United States Constitution? I got a question for each one of them. When was the last time you read the Constitution? How do you keep an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution if you've never read it? I don't believe that that's possible. When you swear an oath to uphold and defend something, you've got to know and understand it. And it's your personal responsibility to keep that oath. From the dog catcher all the way down to the President of the United States. Yay. Dog catcher, President. Yeah, that's the right order. They all swear the same oath. And we have an individual responsibility to keep it. There's the oath of office. Every oath for the military, for every public official, the United States Constitution is first. And you know why that each of us must swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution? Because the Founding Fathers put it in the Constitution that we were all required. The rule of law demands that we swear an oath to the Constitution. It's in the Constitution itself, Article 6. There it is. Read that. The senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers both of the United States and of the several states shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. If you don't swear an oath of allegiance, you have violated the supreme law of the land. If you don't keep your oath, you have violated the trust of the people. In other words, you've committed treason. Next one. Now, state nullification, have you ever heard of that term? I didn't make it up. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison were really big on state nullification. This was in the Kentucky Resolution that he wrote back in 1798 when he was vice president. Read the gold part. States have the authority to judge the constitutionality of the federal government's laws and decrees. Do you know why we have that authority? Because we formed the federal government in the first place. They didn't form us. They work for us. And when they're out of control, we put them in their place. Yeah. That's right. Jefferson said that the state should refuse to enforce laws which they deem to be unconstitutional. We don't leave freedom to the U.S. Supreme Court. They're not the ones who decide what our freedom is. Texas decides what our freedom is. We decide. It's our state. And we back each other up on this. And then we go one more to the right. Look at the word that James Madison, the father of our Constitution, used. It's there in gold. Interpose. That state legislatures are duty-bound to interpose their power to prevent the federal government from victimizing its people. Has that happened any lately? Yeah. TSA? All right. Next one. These are the two sheriffs that filed the lawsuit that went all the way to the Supreme Court. I want to remind you, this is the victory. We beat them. We won this case, and it was all on state sovereignty. It was all on states' rights. Make sure you see this evidence for yourself, and I'm going to show you a little bit more right now. Look, when I filed this case, it was in the courtroom in Tucson, Arizona, courtroom of the Federal District Court, and the judge was John M. Roll. Have you heard that name? He was killed January 8th in the maniacal shooting in Tucson, Arizona that has become known as the Congresswoman Gifford shooting. Well, I think it was the Judge Roll shooting. He was the second one killed. He was one of the best judges in the history of America. And he was killed that day taking a bullet for somebody else. He was my judge. He changed my life. He changed the history of America. And he said this: Mack is thus forced to choose between keeping his oath or obeying the law, subjecting himself to possible sanctions. When all of us, when every peace officer, when every state official here is forced to choose between keeping your oath and following the Constitution or obeying stupid laws, which one are you going to decide with? You're going to side with the people, or are you going to side with the politicians? That's the decision we have to make today. All right. When the Brady Bill came out, they didn't tell us the truth about it. The sheriffs were actually required to do it. They never said that. Bill Clinton advertised it and said, the Brady Bill is going to make us so safe in America that even our police officers won't need to carry guns anymore. Yeah, he said that. Now, I wasn't going to sue him over that. I just took it as Washington, D.C. entertainment. That's all it was. But when we found out the truth, they had 3 PATF agents send all the sheriffs personally bring us a document that said, you will work for us, you will do all these background checks, and you will do the work for free. And if you don't, they threaten to arrest us if we fail to comply. And that's the threat of arrest right there. That's out of the Brady Bill. It's in this little booklet. Under a separate provision of the Gun Control Act, any person who knowingly violates the section of the Gun Control Act amended by the Brady Bill shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for no more than 1 year, or both. So that's what we were facing. And can you believe only 7 sheriffs, only 1 from Texas, joined this lawsuit back in 1994. That's amazing. There's 3,100 sheriffs in America, only 7 did this. And Sheriff Prince and I ended up at the Supreme Court on it. This is the motto of this whole case. We have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Do you understand what that says? This means the President of the United States cannot tell your state what to do. They cannot tell your sheriff, they cannot tell your county commission, they can't tell your legislature, they can't tell your governor. They can't tell anybody in the state of Texas or Arizona or any place else what to do. And if the President can't tell me what to do, and if Congress can't tell me what to do, how did the EPA get the authority? They've stolen it. And Justice Scalia, who wrote this, even put out a little memo in here, added a little addendum, how the EPA was ruled to be unconstitutional in the early 1970s. Maybe you ought to look at this and see what it's all about. And why are they more powerful today? Because nobody has done anything about it. And Texas sat back and said, well, I guess if the federal government wants to do that, that's fine. No more. It's time to tell them to go home. Okay, now we're getting into the meat of the case here. Now, Scalia wrote this decision. It was a 5-4 split. He makes a couple of little mistakes here, but one's kind of a big one, one's a small one. It is incontestable, he said, that the Constitution established a system of dual sovereignty. A lot of constitutional scholars says there's no such thing as dual sovereignty. You're either sovereign or you're not. Okay? But when you look at how small the federal government's sovereignty is, their authority is so small, it really doesn't much matter, it doesn't change as much, because the state sovereignty is huge. The federal government only has discrete enumerated powers, and they can't go outside that. Because the 10th Amendment says they cannot. They're not allowed. It's against the law. just like gun control in America. It's against the law. So why do we have 23,000 gun control laws? All right. No, go back. But he makes it a comeback here. He says, although the states surrendered, did the states surrender anything when we formed the new union and we formed the federal government? What does the 10th Amendment say that the states did? What's the word? In the 10th Amendment, the states delegated. We didn't surrender anything. And we're not surrendering anything today. Okay? Although the states surrendered some of their powers, they actually delegated the powers to the new federal government. But Scalia makes a huge comeback here. Look at what the states retain. A residuary and inviolable sovereignty. If the state of Texas was inviolably sovereign, don't you think that we would be able to run our own geography, control our own border, control our own air, be in charge of our own education, be in charge of our own health care? You know? Next one. Residual state sovereignty. Now Scalia really makes a big comeback here. Was also implicit, of course, in the Constitution's conferral upon Congress of not all governmental powers, but only what? Discrete enumerated ones. Which implication was rendered expressed by the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people. Because the people are just as powerful, if not more so, than the states. We are sovereign. Okay, next one. The great innovation. Look at this. The great innovation. This is not me, folks. I'm not making any of this up. This is the Supreme Court in my case. Okay? I didn't make this wording up at all. The great innovation of this design was that our citizens would have two political capacities. We all get that. One federal, one state. Okay. Read the next line. Each protected from incursion by the other. So if the federal government comes into Texas and commits incursions or gropes people in airports against the law, who's supposed to stop it? The state of Texas. The incursions protected by the other. It is our job. It is your governor's job. It's your sheriff's job. It's your legislature's job. That's what state sovereignty is. Oh, I know. Wait, time out. Let's take a time out, Bruce, okay? Let's time out. I know you all think that state sovereignty is something the federal government's supposed to enforce. You think states' rights are something the federal government is going to protect. Are you kidding? Oh, I know. You're waiting for Barack Obama to choose the next state sovereignty czar. Well, that's not going to happen. State sovereignty is ours to protect. The 10th Amendment is supposed to be done and enforced by the states. It's not the federal government's job. It's ours. We retained that power. Okay? Now you're catching on, and let's go to the next piece of evidence. As Madison, Scalia is actually quoting the Founding Fathers in the Federalist Papers. Can you imagine such a thing? The local or municipal authorities, the cities or the counties, form distinct and independent portions of the supremacy. That sure shoots down the Supremacy Clause theory, doesn't it? The Supremacy Clause does not grant omnipotence to the federal government. It only grants omnipotence if they do something that's constitutional. And they haven't followed the Constitution in decades. So there's nothing supreme in Washington, D.C., because only the Constitution is supreme. And they are outside the Constitution on a daily basis. So, next one. Look at this separation of the two spheres, the state sphere and the federal sphere. This separation is one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. Did you see what Scalia just said? State sovereignty is a structural protection of liberty. Man, oh man. Maybe we ought to just quit right now and not even bring on the rest of the speakers, because we're not talking about anything important here. We're just talking about one of these little structural protections of liberty things. You can do without those, can't you? Let's replace it with political correctness and the political agendas of both major parties. Yeah, that'll save us. Man, okay, look at this. He compares state sovereignty to a fourth branch of government. That's how vital the 10th Amendment is. Look at what he says. Just as the separation and independence of the coordinate branches of the federal government serve to prevent the accumulation of excessive power in any one branch, a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. My dear friends, how is it then that we reduce the risk of tyranny today? We have to maintain a healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government. It says it right there. Do we have that balance of power today? No. Then we better get some people in office who know what the hell the difference is than having it. And my dear friends, this book right here, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, documents this evidence and connects all the dots as to how and why the sheriff is your ultimate protector. At the very beginning of the book, it quotes Thomas Jefferson, "When all power shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided and become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated." When government becomes venal and oppressive, to whom can the people of Texas turn for peace, safety, and protection? If not the very sheriff who promised in God's name that he would do just that. He is the ultimate protector. He is the one that will decide what is and what is not enforced in your county. Somebody needs to educate him, and I think it's you. He works for you. Okay? Next one. Scalia quotes Madison again. Hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other at the same time that each will be controlled by itself. My dear friends and fellow Texans, is there any question as to whether or not the federal government will control itself? People laugh everywhere I go on that question. Right there. The federal government, we held, may not compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program. That is against the law, my dear friends. What does that do to Obamacare? Pretty much strips it, doesn't it? That's where you stop it. Where do you think it's going to be enforced? In Washington, D.C.? They're going to send us all there to get it? It's going to be in Austin, and it's going to be in every single county. So where do we stop it? We stop it in Austin and every single county. And how do we take back America? County by county and state by state. It's not going to happen in Washington, D.C. Okay? This is my favorite quote from the entire decision. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. You see that? But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. Have you ever heard that crisis of the day thing lately? It's the mantra of the Obama administration. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Where we stop that is right here. County by county, state by state. Okay? This is the final order of the court. This is Justice Scalia shaking his finger at the United States Congress. Start in gold. The federal government may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems, nor command the state's officers or those of their political subdivisions to administer or enforce a federal regulatory program. Next. It matters not whether policy making is involved, and no case-by-case weighing of the burdens or benefits is necessary. Such commands are fundamentally incompatible with our constitutional system of dual sovereignty. End quote. Folks, does it get any more powerful than that? 2 small town sheriffs taking this case all the way to the Supreme Court and winning. Why was that hidden from you? Because they didn't want you to know. Because they know that if they keep you ignorant, they keep you enslaved.
Yeah.
My dear friends, I'd like to close now. And I want to share with you something I do all across this country. I did this yesterday at a big rally out in a park in Akron, Ohio, yesterday afternoon. I'll do the same here today. When I was converted, I was a peace officer. I'd been a cop for about three and a half years. And I went to a constitutional training seminar put on by somebody I hope you know. His name was Dr. W. Cleon Skousen. And he converted me to the Constitution, and I do mean converted. Because during this meeting, he taught us the making of America and the miraculous nature that America was in the first place. And I felt the spirit of freedom so strong in that room. And I realized that the spirit of freedom is only the Spirit of God. And it did touch my heart. And at one point he had 240 cops get up and he taught us all a little kindergarten exercise. And as the close of my presentation today, I will share that with you. And I want you to know I dedicate it to each of you. And I dedicate it to Dr. Skousen and his memory, and Judge Roll, and the Founding Fathers, and each of you, to your children and mine, to your grandchildren and mine. And I dedicate it to America and to all of you, my fellow Texans, and I call this America's political prayer. And as I do this, remember, I learned this at police training. And this quote prayer is not really a prayer, I guess, but maybe it's the only one we got left. And if you'll indulge me, it goes like this. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And that's the eagle. Long may she be free. Thank you so much.